All Cooper CPAs, located in the heart of East Nashville, offer a wide variety of tax services for individuals and businesses. Contact them at 615-257-0646 and visit their website, allcooper.com, for a full list of services.
Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batter's Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batter's Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batter's Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Well, coming up next on Political Soup, Crom Carmichael will get us all filled in on a little bit more about the sequester. We're also going to talk about the minimum wage. Can we afford it, and why are the unions so much for it? And of course, before the show is over, somebody's going to have to answer the question, why do I have to pay my cell bill? All that and more coming up next on Political Soup.
Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkapolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show. From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or at usamotorandmachine.com.
Microcasting for your city, Talkapolis.
And welcome, everybody, to Political Soup. I'm Joe Williams, along with Crom Carmichael, where we talk about the politics of the day. And as Crom says, I talk and he brings facts, and that's probably the biggest difference between the two of us. And boy, when you bring facts, you bring them with you.
Well, I try to.
One of the things that you and I have been talking about off the air is this new move to raise the minimum wage. You know, it sounds really good on the front end. I mean, everybody wants to make more money, and it's a whole lot of fun when your employer has to pay you more money. You don't think it's such a good idea? I'm kind of neutral.
Well,
tell me what you're thinking.
Well, it's a terrible idea, and if you think of it this way, the metaphor is you've got a ladder of life in front of you.
Okay.
Okay, and you climb up on the first rung, then you climb up on the second rung and the third rung.
Right.
But what happens if they knock out the first three rungs and make you start on the fourth rung and you can't? You're stuck on the ground for your entire life. You're stuck on the ground. And to me, that's a moral question. But the data, so let's go to the data.
Okay.
All right, I've got right here an article that shows that in 2007, the minimum wage was $5.15.
Okay.
Then it was raised at varying times up to $7.25.
Right.
Okay, the black teenage unemployment rate went from 26%, which is quite high,
Yes.
up to a high of 46% at the top of the so-called Great Recession, which for black teenagers was a depression.
Yeah.
But it's only gone down since then to 38%. And what Obama is talking about doing is now raising the minimum wage from $7.25 to $9, and that would then push it back up. Now let's remember something. If somebody's earning the minimum wage, they also receive the earned income tax credit. So they actually receive a check from the government. We could discuss that at another time,
Right.
but the fact of the matter is that if you are working and making the minimum wage, you do get something from the government because you're working.
Right.
If you lose your job, you don't get the earned income tax credit. You're stuck on whatever welfare benefits you can get. And so the history shows, now Obama says in his State of the Union, he says employers may get a more stable workforce due to reduced turnover and increased productivity. Now, it's great. This article says, boy, I bet Republicans business people are slapping themselves in the head saying, why didn't I think of that? Okay, and then it says, a range of economic studies show that modestly raising the minimum wage increases earnings and reduces poverty without measurably reducing unemployment, or without measurably reducing employment. Now, the words modestly and measurable, I guess you can argue whatever they mean. But the fact of the matter is that the studies show, for example, from Trinity University concluded that in 21 states where the full 40% wage increase took effect, the consequences of the minimum wage for black young adults without a diploma actually was worse than the consequences of the Great Recession.
Well, but wait a minute now. There's a caveat there. Without a diploma.
That's right. But the number of black teenagers who drop out of school is not a small number. It is a large number. It is somewhere between 30 and 45%, depending on what location you are talking about.
Well,
that's high.
But that comes back to something you and I have talked about before, and that is not just what's on the surface, but the underlying cause.
Yeah.
Let's keep them in school. Figure out a way to keep them in school and let them get a diploma.
Well, get a better education
Yeah.
or go to a better school.
Well,
That's all true. But even if they drop out of school, if they do work, if somebody works, they learn.
Right.
And then they learn how to work better. If they're with a company that will train them,
Right.
then they can become worth more. And they climb to the second rung, the third rung, and the fourth rung. But once again, if you're stuck on the ground and you have to either start on the fourth rung or you can't work, I ask any student, any college student who supports the minimum wage, I said, how much money do you expect to make when you graduate from school in your first job? And you'll get somewhere around $30,000 to $35,000 for a college graduate. That's kind of what they'll say. That's what you expect.
Yeah.
I said, well, suppose the minimum wage were $60,000. Do you think you'd ever get your first job? And they just sit there and look at me. And that's really the question. It's not what they think is right. It's what actually is right. And the fact of the matter is that the more you raise the minimum wage, the more you hurt people who are having a hard time getting a job in the first place. And if you keep them from getting a job, where are they going to learn and where are they going to be able to improve themselves? And they won't.
The next question that goes along with that, Crom, if the minimum wage is raised, employers of all types, from food service to grocery stores to gasoline stations, they're going to have to make the difference up some way. Would this kind of a minimum wage increase not kind of ignite some inflation in this country?
Well, let me say this. Businesses, especially small businesses, the ones you're talking about, restaurants, for example, they charge as much as they think they can.
Yeah.
So if they raise their price, what happens to their sales? If they're already charging the most that they think they can, their sales go down. So it doesn't benefit them to raise their price and chase away their customers. And so the minimum wage, it will hurt businesses. They will try to find equipment to automate so that they can work with fewer employees.
Right.
And that's just the effect of it. Now, let's switch gears just a little bit on minimum wage, because the unions have come out and said, I'm all for the minimum wage. Well, it turns out that a lot of union contracts, the pay to a union member is tied to the minimum wage. So if the minimum wage goes up, they automatically get a pay raise. Okay.
So but it's not based on minimum wage. It's for a union member. It's minimum wage.
It might be
plus.
Yeah. So it might be minimum wage plus $10. So if the minimum wage goes up $1.75,
I got a $1.75 raise.
Yeah. And in other cases, it says if the minimum wage goes up, we can reopen negotiations on the pay in our contract. And a lot, I'm not talking about a few, a lot of union agreements, union contracts have either one or the other. It's either tied directly to minimum wage, or it says that if minimum wage goes up, I get to renegotiate my contract. How much money did the unions give to the Democrats in the last election? $174 million. $174 million. And so what this is now payback time.
Out of that $174 million, how many of those were made in $500,000 increments so they can visit the president 4 times a year?
Well, isn't that something? I tell you what. And he's setting up his, I don't even know what you call it, but if a Republican said, you give me $500,000 to my 501c3 and you get to come see me once a quarter, my gosh, the press would go crazy. Is that not buying access? If it's not buying access, what is it?
You know, to quote an old joke, we know what it is.
Here you
All we're
go.
doing now is negotiating price. Tell you what, we better stop this segment right there. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about somebody's favorite country, Italy. Oh my, are they having fun? All that and more coming up next. Political Soup.